The 2021 Los Angeles Lakers are more than likely going to go down as one of the biggest failures in the history of not only basketball, but sports. And as the desperation of this season has continued, the crazy hot takes about what they should do going forward have only gotten hotter. The most recent conversation has been about the Lakers potentially blowing it up and starting from scratch. So, should the Lakers rebuild? Let's talk about it. If you end up enjoying this video, then please be sure to subscribe for more NBA content. Also drop a like, it only takes one click, and it really makes a massive difference in how the video performs. Also, two quick things to promote. If you have not checked out my most recent deep dive, which is the most recent upload on this channel after this one, please be sure to go do that. And second, we have a podcast that is finally out and is live every Sunday and Wednesday, and there are 2 episodes out now. The most recent one I think went really well, so go check that out, it is much appreciated. To be clear, when it comes to this conversation, we are not talking about retooling the Lakers. I think everyone and their mother would agree that this team needs some retooling at the bare minimum. No one is in favor of running this thing back, not the fans, not the executives, not the players. The only people who might want the Lakers to run it back with the same exact team are NBA YouTubers because this team is comedy and it gets you easy views. To be clear, when I use the word rebuild, I mean you're trading Russ if that's possible, you're trading Anthony Davis, and yes, you're trading LeBron James. Now, for those who may not be aware, I want to make it clear that this is not a conversation that I am trying to start. This is a take that has been going around as of recently. This is an extreme take in my opinion, but Lakers fans all over Twitter have talked up and down about the notion of just saying fuck it and leaving the Lakers core as we know it behind. So first of all, what has led to this take being common? Now, I realize the most obvious takeaway would be that just, well, the Lakers suck. But we all know that, and we knew that earlier in the season, and this was not a popular take then. A team can suck, but then be retooled and be perfectly fine. Figure out a way to get rid of Westbrook, put some actual solid role players, specifically defenders and shooters around LeBron and AD, and you get a season of those two being relatively healthy, and you can win it all like that. You know how I know they can win it all like that? They did that in 2020. Decent defenders, decent shooters, around those two was a winning formula. Now getting rid of Russ, signing role players with limited cap flexibility, and honestly attracting players to LA with how much of a disaster that team appears to be internally right now, all of that is no small task. However, it seems like a lot more rational of an option than just blowing it up. So what changed? Well, there's really 2 big factors. The first one is how much LeBron has been eager to talk about leaving the Lakers over the All-Star break, specifically talking about his son and his future in that regard. Also showing a lot of affinity for the Cleveland Cavaliers, which is a rumor that I have even talked about here. And there's also been a ton of reports about conflicts between LeBron and some other Lakers players and the front office, and it seems like something is going to happen extreme one way or the other. The next thing is Anthony Davis and his injuries. Basically, for the entirety of the few holdouts for the Lakers actually still being good this year, the entire belief was that Anthony Davis was going to save them when he came back from injury. But when he came back from his injury, he A, did not save them, and B, just got another serious injury again. The thought was that AD coming back would bring this team back to the super team many thought it could be, but that was the opposite of the case. And I feel like it was that pushed a lot of Lakers fans to an extreme level of hopelessness. Because the thing that I mentioned with the retooling route, the idea of hoping for LeBron and AD to have healthy seasons, at this point, it's becoming close to a pipe dream. When the Lakers traded for Russell Westbrook, the idea was to use his floor-raising attributes to keep the team afloat when those guys were out, and then ideally his ceiling-capping attributes would be mitigated by him being the 3rd best player. Basically, while LeBron and AD miss big time because that's inevitable at this point, Russell Westbrook can keep an otherwise not good roster relatively mediocre at the very least. Yeah, that That didn't work out. So not only is that problem not going away, you've then given yourself a bigger problem on top of it with Russell Westbrook and his contract. Now, I'm going to say the same thing I always do, the obligatory, this is not entirely Russell Westbrook's fault. In fact, I wouldn't even go as far as to say it's half his fault, the problems with the Lakers. He's only one problem to address, but due to the circumstances of his contract, he is potentially a damn near impossible problem to solve. In terms of moving his contract, presuming he takes his player option, which isn't guaranteed, and we'll talk about that in a second, but presuming he does, the only option would be trading for other bad contracts that are longer than 1 year. Weirdly enough, like a Spencer Dinwiddie and Davis Bertans type of package. That's kind of the best you could hope for. That is your best case scenario, unless Russell Westbrook hates being in LA more than he likes money. If Westbrook were to bless the Los Angeles Lakers organization by not picking up his $45 million player option, then obviously you do not rebuild. Because all of a sudden you have cleared $40 million in cap space and of course ridded yourself of Westbrook. From that point, let's say you sign a handful of role players and bring back Malik Monk. Let's say it's a really good free agency like TJ Warren, Robert Covington, Jeremy Lamb, JaVale McGee, Jeff Green, and Tyus Jones. A lineup of Tyus, who is underrated as fuck by the way. Malik Monk, LeBron James, Anthony Davis, and JaVale McGee with TJ Warren as a sixth man, Robert Covington as a bench defender, Jeremy Lamb and Jeff Green as good overall role players. That team is absolutely a contender, especially with that wing depth with AD at 5 lineups. Put LeBron at the 4 and run TJ at 3 for more offensive-minded stuff, or Robert Covington if you want a more defensive-minded lineup. So seriously, like, if Russell Westbrook's contract is no longer an issue, do not trade LeBron and AD. It makes no sense at that point because you have the room to actually put a good roster around them. Probability of that seems pretty low because as much as Russell Westbrook cares about winning, and he probably doesn't seem to like LA, turning down $45 million is a tall task. So with Russell Westbrook's contract, with LeBron getting older and more injury prone, with AD continuing to be extremely injury prone and not having been the same in multiple years, at what point do you give up hope on the concept of retooling and just say fuck it and reset this whole thing? Well, this might be an easier decision to make with just about any other team of this level with this kind of talent. If not for one thing, that is LeBron. When you have LeBron on your roster, until proven otherwise, you pretty much inherently have a way to win it all. And to have that opportunity and just throw it away is kind of insane, but they also fucked things up to such a monumental extent that you have made the, quote, you have LeBron, therefore you can win argument the weakest it has ever been. Not because LeBron has declined maybe a little bit, but really just because this is the worst roster that LeBron has maybe played on, and that is not a low bar. So the notion of trading LeBron James, yes, it's insane. It's something we just don't do. But the circumstances the Lakers have created for themselves are so extreme that maybe the insane route is the only way to go. The question of whether or not the Lakers should rebuild inherently comes down to a gamble one way or the other. The question essentially comes down to, do you want basically the guarantee of a good start to a rebuild, but obviously you don't know where that's going to go 5-10 years from now, or do you want to retool, which could go well or could just further sink you into this sinking ship? And what gamble you choose to go with will probably come down to what you think those championship retool odds are. How high are the chances you can retool and win it all with this team? Let's say there's a 20% chance that there is still another championship in this roster. But again, the guarantee of a good start to a rebuild on the other end of things, which would you rather have? That 1 in 5 chance of achieving the goal or that rebuild? Of course, rebuilding is not guaranteed to work out either. You could end up on this endless cycle of rebuilding and then you've been rebuilding for 20 years like the Sacramento Kings. But at the very least, the assets that you would get back for LeBron James and Anthony Davis would be so noteworthy and significant that you more than likely are going to succeed. You could at the very least net yourself 2 young stars and a handful of first-round picks. Patrick, Kobe White, Nikola Vucevic, and 2 to 3 firsts for AD or LeBron. Let's make it happen. Anthony Simons and like 5 first-round picks for Anthony Davis. Shit like that. I don't even really want to speculate on what a LeBron trade looks like because LeBron has always been above the very concept of being traded. You don't trade LeBron James. You just don't until you do, I guess. So, to finally answer the question of the video, do the Lakers rebuild? Should the Lakers rebuild? No? I mean, not really, right? Probably not. Here's the deal. Is a rebuild with the assets you're going to get in return for LeBron and AD rather tempting? Absolutely. I completely understand why that is a conclusion that many would arrive to. However, I am a big believer in the idea that if you have a championship opportunity, you take it every single time. Win, lose, or draw, taking the decision that will get you a chance at a championship is always the right decision if there is a real chance there, and you don't regret that decision regardless of how it goes. So to me, this question really comes down to whether or not you believe there is another championship within the duo of LeBron James and Anthony Davis, and to me the answer is yes, there is. If there is a singular avenue to getting Russ off of this roster and getting some decent role players around those two, I think you still go for it. And to me, I think with Russ having just a one-year deal, there is an avenue for that type of move to happen. It's also worth mentioning that the Lakers do not have their first until 2026, so that kind of muddies the idea of a rebuild quite a bit. So while I understand why the route might seem appealing and why it might seem like the best way to go, while I certainly have given up on the idea of LeBron, Russ, and AD working, I haven't given up on the idea of LeBron and AD working. LeBron remains a complete anomaly as an older athlete, and until we see anything different, I'm just going to assume he's going to continue to be a superstar. And Anthony Davis, when healthy, is a great player. Even though it was wrong, the last time AD was healthy for a long stretch of time, people were saying the guy was better than Tim Duncan. Now, that was very wrong to say, but it does display just how high people were on him by comparison to where they are right now, where it's popular to shit on the guy. So yeah, I'm gonna say no to the idea of a rebuild. Shout out to Rudy for editing this video. That's the end of this video. Please be sure to like and subscribe for more NBA content like this, and cue the outro music.